My name is Emily Carson, and I never thought I'd be sitting in a lawyer's office at 32D, watching my whole world turn upside down. But let me start from the beginning, because this story isn't just about money or inheritance. It's about family, secrets, and how sometimes the people we trust most can break our hearts in ways we never imagined. I live in a small apartment in Southeast Portland with my daughter Lily, who just turned 10 last month. It's not much. 2 bedrooms, a tiny kitchen where we eat breakfast together every morning, and a living room where Lily does her homework while I grade papers from my job teaching 3rd grade at Woodstock Elementary. The rain patters against our windows most days, typical Oregon weather that Lily says sounds like tiny drums on the roof. Lily is everything to me. She has these bright green eyes that sparkle when she laughs, and curly brown hair that never wants to stay in the ponytails I try to make each morning before school. She's smart as a whip, always asking questions about everything. Why do leaves change colors? How do airplanes stay up in the sky? Why do some people have more money than others? That last question has been coming up more often lately, especially when we pass the big houses in the West Hills where my sister Megan lives. My father, Richard Carson, was the heart of our small family. At 78, he was still sharp as a tack. With silver hair he kept perfectly combed and laugh lines around his blue eyes that matched mine. Every Sunday, Lily and I would drive to his modest house in Southeast Division, where he'd make pancakes from scratch and tell stories about when Megan and I were little. Those Sunday mornings were sacred to us, just the 3 of us, playing board games, watching old movies, and talking about everything and nothing. Dad had worked as a carpenter his whole life, building houses all over Portland. His hands were always rough and calloused, but gentle when he'd braid Lily's hair or help her with a difficult puzzle. He never had much money, but he was rich in love and time, especially for his granddaughter. Lily adored him, calling him Grandpa Rick, and saving up her allowance to buy him little presents, a coffee mug with "World's Best Grandpa" written in crooked letters, or a bookmark she'd made in art class. My sister Megan is 5 years older than me, and our relationship has always been complicated. She married young to a successful real estate developer named David Pemberton, and they live in a sprawling house in the hills with a view of the city. They have 2 teenage sons, Tyler and Brandon, who barely acknowledge Lily's existence when we see them at family gatherings. Megan always seemed to look down on my choices, being a single mother, living in a small apartment, teaching elementary school instead of pursuing something more ambitious, as she'd say. The thing is, I never minded her judgment until it started affecting Lily. I could handle Megan's comments about my simple lifestyle, or her suggestions that I should find a good man to settle down with. But when she'd make little remarks about Lily needing more structure, or how children from broken homes need extra guidance, that's when my protective instincts would kick in. Dad always shut down those conversations quickly, reminding Megan that Lily was perfect just as she was. 3 weeks ago, on a rainy Tuesday morning that started like any other, I got the call that changed everything. I was in my classroom, setting up for the day, when my phone rang. It was Dr. Martinez from OHSU Hospital. "Miss Carson, this is about your father, Richard Carson. He was brought in about an hour ago. He collapsed at home, and I'm afraid he's had a massive heart attack." The words hit me like a physical blow. I remember gripping the edge of my desk, my lesson plans scattering to the floor. Will he be okay? There was a pause that lasted forever. "I'm very sorry, Miss Carson. We did everything we could, but he didn't make it. The attack was too severe." I don't remember much about the next few hours. Somehow I arranged for a substitute teacher, picked up Lily from school, and drove to the hospital in a fog of disbelief. Lily kept asking why I was crying, why we were going to the hospital, what was wrong with Grandpa Rick. How do you tell a 10-year-old that the person who loved her most in the world, after her mother, is gone forever? At the hospital, Megan was already there with David, handling the paperwork with the efficiency she brought to everything in her life. She'd changed out of whatever she'd been wearing into a crisp black dress, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the circumstances. When she saw Lily and me approaching, her expression softened just slightly. "Emily, I'm so sorry," she said, giving me a brief hug that smelled of expensive perfume. It was very quick. The paramedics said he wouldn't have suffered. Lily looked up at me with those bright green eyes, now filled with confusion and the beginning of understanding. "Mama, where's Grandpa Rick? Why is everyone so sad?" I knelt down to her level right there in the hospital hallway. People walking around us, the smell of disinfectant sharp in the air. "Baby, Grandpa Rick got very sick today. His heart stopped working, and the doctors couldn't fix it. He's gone, sweetheart. He died. The sound Lily made was something I'll never forget. Part sob, part wail. The sound of a child's heart breaking for the first time. She threw her arms around my neck and cried into my shoulder while I held her tight, my own tears mixing with hers. Over her head, I saw Megan watching us with an expression I couldn't quite read. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of arrangements, phone calls, and trying to help Lily understand death while dealing with my own grief. Dad had left basic instructions about wanting a simple service at Powell Butte Chapel, followed by burial at Lone Fir Cemetery where his parents were laid to rest. Megan took charge of most of the planning, which I was grateful for at first. I was barely keeping it together, trying to maintain some normalcy for Lily while processing the fact that the strongest, most constant presence in our lives was gone. Lily asked endless questions about death, about heaven, about whether Grandpa Rick could see us. She wanted to help plan the funeral, suggesting we play his favorite songs and display the pictures she'd drawn for him over the years. Her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, called to express condolences and let me know the whole third-grade class had made sympathy cards for Lily. Watching my daughter try to understand loss while maintaining her natural optimism broke my heart all over again. The night before the funeral, I was ironing Lily's black dress, a simple one I'd bought at Target because she didn't own anything appropriate for such an occasion. When my phone rang, it was Megan. "Emily, I've been thinking about tomorrow," she said without preamble. "I don't think Lily should come to the service." I nearly dropped the iron. "What? Of course she's coming. Dad was her grandfather. She's too young to understand what's happening. Children don't really process grief properly. And frankly, Emily, funerals can be traumatic for kids. Tyler and Brandon aren't even coming, and they're teenagers." I could feel my temper rising, but I tried to keep my voice calm. Lily loved Dad more than anyone except me. She has every right to say goodbye to him. "Think about it practically," Megan continued in that tone she used when she thought she knew better than everyone else. "She'll probably cry and disrupt the service. People will be trying to pay their respects, and having a child sobbing in the background isn't appropriate. Plus, some of Dad's older friends will be there, and they're not used to children at formal events. She's not a child, Megan. She's his granddaughter. And if she cries, so what? She's lost someone she loved. Emily, I'm not trying to be difficult. I just think it would be better for everyone, including Lily, if she stayed home tomorrow. Maybe you could arrange for a babysitter, and we could have a private family moment at the graveside later, just the three of us." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. The three of us. What about Lily? I meant you, me, and David. Look, I know you're emotional right now, but try to think clearly. This is about respecting Dad's memory and having a dignified service. Children simply don't belong at funerals. I was quiet for so long that Megan said my name twice before I responded. "She's coming, Megan." End of discussion. "Emily, please don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm the one who's organized everything. I've paid for the reception, and I think I have some say in how Dad's funeral should be conducted. You paid for it." The question came out sharper than I intended. Someone had to handle the arrangements. You've been so wrapped up in your own grief that you haven't been thinking practically about any of this. That stung because it was partially true. I had been drowning in sadness, focusing on comforting Lily and getting through each day. But the idea that this gave Megan the right to exclude my daughter from her grandfather's funeral was unthinkable. "I'll pay you back for whatever you spent," I said quietly. "But Lily is coming tomorrow." There was a long pause. When Megan spoke again, her voice had that cold edge I knew meant she'd made up her mind. "Emily, I'm telling you as someone who cares about this family's reputation and Dad's memory. If you bring that child tomorrow, you'll regret it. Some things are more important than indulging a 10-year-old's emotions." The line went dead. I stood there in my small living room, iron still warm in my hand, looking at Lily's black dress hanging on the closet door. From her bedroom, I could hear her talking to her stuffed animals, probably telling them about Grandpa Rick like she did every night since he died. For the first time since Dad's death, I felt something other than grief. I felt angry. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying Megan's words, trying to understand how she could think it was okay to ban Lily from her own grandfather's funeral. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dad's face the last time we'd visited him, just 4 days before he died. He'd been teaching Lily how to play chess, his weathered hands guiding her small fingers as she moved the pieces across his old wooden board. She's got a good strategic mind, this one, he'd told me, winking at Lily. Reminds me of someone else I know when she was little. He'd meant me, and the memory made my chest ache. At 6 a.m, I gave up on sleep and made coffee, sitting at my small kitchen table and watching the rain streak down the windows. Lily found me there an hour later, already dressed in her school clothes even though it was Saturday. "Mama, is today Grandpa Rick's funeral?" she asked, climbing into the chair next to me. "Yes, baby. Are you sure you want to go? It's going to be very sad." Lily nodded solemnly. "I want to say goodbye to him properly. Mrs. Rodriguez told me that funerals are how we honor people we love." My heart swelled with pride and broke a little at the same time. Here was my 10-year-old daughter, showing more maturity and understanding than my 37-year-old sister. "Then we're going," I said, reaching over to smooth her curls. "You and me together." The service was scheduled for 11 at Powell Butte Chapel, a small, traditional building nestled among tall evergreens on the outskirts of the city. I'd been there once before, for a co-worker's mother's funeral, and remembered how peaceful it felt with the natural light streaming through simple stained glass windows. Lily and I arrived 15 minutes early. She looked beautiful and solemn in her black dress, her hair in the neat French braid I'd finally managed to master after watching 3 YouTube tutorials. She carried a small bouquet of daisies we'd picked from the garden behind our apartment building, Dad's favorite flowers. The parking lot was fuller than I'd expected. Dad had been well-liked in his neighborhood, and at the construction sites where he'd worked over the years. I recognized several faces from his poker nights and the local diner where he ate breakfast every Tuesday with his old crew. As we walked toward the chapel entrance, I saw Megan's silver BMW pulling into a spot near the front. My stomach tightened, but I squeezed Lily's hand and kept walking. "Remember what we talked about," I whispered to Lily. "If anyone says anything that hurts your feelings, you come straight to me, okay?" She nodded, but I could see she was nervous. Her free hand was fidgeting with the hem of her dress, a habit she'd had since she was little. We made it about halfway up the front steps before Megan appeared, seemingly from nowhere. She was wearing an elegant black suit that probably cost more than I made in a month, her blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon. David stood slightly behind her, looking uncomfortable in his expensive suit. "Emily," Megan said, her voice carrying that warning tone I remembered from childhood. "I thought we discussed this." "We did," I replied evenly. "And I told you Lily was coming." Several people walking up the steps slowed down, sensing tension. I could feel their eyes on us, and I hated that we were creating a scene at Dad's funeral, but I wasn't backing down. Megan's gaze shifted to Lily, who pressed closer to my side. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice suddenly sugar-sweet in that way that made my skin crawl. "This really isn't a place for children. Why don't you go wait in your mom's car while the grown-ups say goodbye to Grandpa Rick?" "No," Lily said quietly, but clearly. "I want to say goodbye too." I felt a surge of pride at my daughter's courage, but Megan's expression hardened. "Emily, you're being selfish," she hissed, stepping closer so her voice wouldn't carry. "This is about Dad, not about proving some point about your parenting choices." "My parenting choices?" The words came out louder than I intended. "Megan, what exactly do you think is wrong with bringing his granddaughter to his funeral?" David finally spoke up, his voice low and diplomatic. "Maybe we could compromise. Lily could come to the graveside service but skip the chapel portion." "No," I said firmly. "Lily loved Dad, and she has every right to be here for all of it." Megan's face flushed pink. "Fine, but when she has a breakdown and disrupts everything, don't say I didn't warn you." She turned on her heel and stalked into the chapel, David following with an apologetic glance over his shoulder. Lily looked up at me with those wise green eyes. "Mama, why doesn't Aunt Megan want me here?" It was a question I couldn't answer honestly without saying terrible things about my sister in front of my daughter, so I knelt down and took both of her hands in mine. "Sometimes when people are very sad, they don't think clearly about what's right," I said carefully. "But Grandpa Rick would want you here, and that's what matters." The service was beautiful, despite the rocky start. The chapel was filled with flowers, and someone had created a photo display near the front showing Dad throughout his life, as a young soldier, on his wedding day with my mother, holding baby Megan and later baby me, at construction sites, and dozens of pictures with Lily over the past 10 years. Lily sat quietly beside me, occasionally wiping her eyes but never making a sound. She was better behaved than most of the adults, including Megan's teenage sons, who spent half the service looking at their phones. When it came time for family to speak, Megan gave a polished eulogy about Dad's dedication to family and hard work. It was nice, but generic. The kind of thing you could have said about anyone's father. When she finished and returned to her seat, I felt Lily tugging on my sleeve. "Mama, can I say something about Grandpa Rick?" My heart stopped. We hadn't discussed this, and I could already see Megan's disapproving stare burning into the side of my head. But when I looked at my daughter's earnest face, I knew I couldn't say no. "Are you sure you want to, baby?" She nodded, and I walked with her to the front of the chapel. The pastor, a kind man named Reverend Williams who had known Dad for years, smiled encouragingly and lowered the microphone to Lily's height. For a moment, she just stood there, looking out at the sea of faces. Then she cleared her throat and began to speak in her clear, young voice. "Hi, I'm Lily, and Grandpa Rick was the best grandfather in the whole world. He taught me how to play chess and how to make pancakes that don't stick to the pan. He always remembered my favorite colors, purple and green, and he never forgot to ask about my spelling tests." Her voice wavered a little, but she kept going. "Grandpa Rick told me that love is the most important thing, and that it doesn't disappear when someone dies. It just changes into memories that we keep in our hearts forever. So even though I'm really sad that he's gone, I'm also happy because I have so many good memories of him." She paused, reaching into her small purse and pulling out a folded piece of paper. "I wrote him a letter to say goodbye. Mama, can you help me read it?" I stepped closer, my own eyes blurring with tears. The chapel was completely silent, except for the sound of people sniffling. "Dear Grandpa Rick," Lily read, her voice growing stronger. "Thank you for teaching me that it's okay to be curious about everything, and that asking questions is how we learn. Thank you for always having time for me, even when you were tired from work. Thank you for telling me I was smart and brave and kind, because it made me want to be all those things." She looked up from the paper, directly at the casket surrounded by flowers. "And I promise I'll take care of Mama, and I'll remember all the stories you told me about when she was little. I'll keep playing chess and making pancakes, and every time I do, I'll think of you. I love you forever and always. Love, Lily." The silence that followed was profound. I could hear crying from several pews, and when I looked out at the congregation, I saw more than one person reaching for tissues. Even some of Dad's tough construction buddies were wiping their eyes. As we walked back to our seats, I caught sight of Megan's face. For just a moment, her composed mask had slipped, and I saw something that looked almost like regret. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. The rest of the service passed in a blur. We sang Dad's favorite hymn, "How Great Thou Art," and Reverend Williams spoke about the importance of family and leaving a legacy of love. Then it was time for the procession to Lone Fir Cemetery. At the graveside, under a canopy of tall oak trees, we said our final goodbyes. The rain had stopped, and weak November sunshine filtered through the branches. Lily placed her bouquet of daisies on the casket and whispered something I couldn't hear. As people began to disperse, many of them stopped to hug Lily and tell her how beautiful her speech had been. Mrs. Chen, Dad's next-door neighbor, pressed a $20 bill into Lily's hand for being such a brave girl. Tom Rodriguez, one of Dad's old work friends, knelt down to tell her that her grandfather would be so proud of her. "That little girl has more class than most adults," I heard someone say behind me. Megan was accepting condolences near the cemetery's main path, playing the role of chief mourner with practiced grace. I noticed she hadn't spoken to Lily since our confrontation on the chapel steps. As we were walking back to my car, David appeared beside us. Without Megan around, his demeanor was different, warmer, more genuine. "Emily, I want you to know that what Lily did in there, it was really special. She gave your dad the kind of send-off he deserved." "Thank you," I said, surprised by his sincerity. He looked down at Lily, who was carefully carrying the folded flag that had been presented to our family. "Dad had served briefly in Vietnam. Your grandpa talked about you all the time, you know? He was so proud of how smart and kind you are." Lily smiled up at him, the first real smile I'd seen from her all day. "He was proud of my mama, too. He said she was the strongest person he knew." David's expression grew thoughtful. "Now, he was right about that." After he walked away, I buckled Lily into her booster seat and started the car. We drove in comfortable silence for a while, both of us emotionally drained from the day. "Mama," Lily said as we stopped at a red light, "do you think I did okay today? Do you think Grandpa Rick would have liked what I said?" I turned around to look at her, this incredible little girl who had handled one of the hardest days of her life with more grace and dignity than I'd seen from many adults. "Baby, you were perfect, absolutely perfect, And yes, I know Grandpa Rick loved every word you said." She smiled and went back to looking out the window. But I was troubled by the events of the day, particularly by Megan's behavior. The sister I'd grown up with could be difficult and judgmental, but she'd never been cruel. There was something else going on, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. That evening, while Lily was in her room drawing pictures of memories with Grandpa Rick, I called my friend Jessica, who had helped me navigate the challenges of single motherhood and family drama more times than I could count. "Jess, am I crazy? Or was Megan completely out of line today? From what you've told me, she was way out of line," Jessica said without hesitation. "I mean, trying to ban Lily from her grandfather's funeral. That's not normal sibling rivalry, that's something else entirely. But what? What could possibly motivate her to be so cruel to a 10-year-old? I don't know, but my gut says this isn't really about Lily at all. Think about it. Megan's always been controlling, but this feels different, more desperate. We talked for another hour, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something important. As I was getting ready for bed, my phone rang. It was an unknown number with a local area code. "Ms. Carson, this is James Morrison from Morrison, Webb & Associates. I was your father's attorney." My stomach dropped. "Yes, hello. I'm very sorry for your loss. Your father was a good man. I'm calling because he left specific instructions for me to contact you and your sister after the funeral. Could you and Mrs. Pemberton come to my office tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock? There are some matters we need to discuss regarding your father's estate." "Of course," I said, though the word estate seemed too grand for Dad's modest possessions. "Should I bring anything? Just yourself and Ms. Carson. Your father asked me to tell you specifically to bring Lily, if that's possible." He was quite insistent about that. After I hung up, I sat on my bed staring at the phone. Dad had barely owned anything beyond his small house and an old pickup truck. What kind of estate matters could possibly require a lawyer's office? And why had he specifically wanted Lily there? I called Megan that night to tell her about the lawyer's appointment, but it went straight to voicemail. I left a message with the details and tried to push down the growing unease in my stomach. Something about the lawyer's tone, the specific request for Lily to be there, felt significant in a way I couldn't explain. The next morning was Sunday, which should have been our day to visit Dad. Instead, Lily and I sat at our kitchen table eating cereal in silence, both of us feeling the absence like a physical ache. The empty chair where Dad usually sat seemed to take up more space than usual. "Mama, why does the lawyer want to see me?" Lily asked, stirring her Lucky Charms without eating them. "I'm not sure, sweetheart. Maybe Grandpa Rick left you something special, like one of his tools, or a book. I hope he left me his chess set," she said quietly. "And maybe that picture of him and Grandma Helen from their wedding day. The one on his dresser. My mother had died when I was 15 and Megan was 20. Dad never remarried, keeping their wedding photo on his dresser for 37 years. The thought of Lily treasuring that connection to grandparents she'd never really known made my throat tight. At 1:30, we drove to downtown Portland, to a glass building near Pioneer Square where Morrison, Webb & Associates had their offices on the 15th floor. Lily pressed her face to the elevator windows as we rose above the city, pointing out landmarks Dad had shown her during their walks through downtown. The law office was all polished wood and serious-looking books, the kind of place that made me conscious of my teacher's salary and department store clothes. The receptionist, a woman with silver hair and kind eyes, smiled warmly at Lily. "You must be Lily Carson. Mr. Morrison has been looking forward to meeting you." We were led to a conference room, where James Morrison was waiting. A tall, thin man in his 60s with graying hair and gentle eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He stood when we entered and shook both our hands with equal seriousness. "Lily, your grandfather talked about you quite a bit. He was very proud of you. He was proud of my mama, too," Lily said, settling into the chair next to mine. "Are you going to tell us about Grandpa Rick's will?" "I am indeed. We're just waiting for your Aunt Megan." As if summoned by his words, Megan appeared in the doorway with David behind her. She was wearing another expensive-looking outfit, a navy blue dress with matching jacket that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Her eyes swept over me and Lily with barely concealed irritation. "I'm sorry we're late," she said, though she didn't sound sorry. "The traffic was terrible." Mr. Morrison gestured for them to sit across from us at the polished conference table. "Not a problem at all. Thank you both for coming on such short notice." He opened a thick folder and pulled out several documents. "First, I want to express my condolences to all of you. Richard was a client of mine for over 20 years, and I considered him a friend. He was a man of simple needs but deep convictions. Megan shifted impatiently in her chair. Yes, Dad was wonderful. Can we please get to the business at hand? I have several appointments this afternoon. Something flickered across Mr. Morrison's face. Disapproval, maybe, or surprise at her abruptness. But he simply nodded and put on his reading glasses. Of course. Richard's will is quite straightforward, actually. He made some changes about 6 months ago, which he asked me to explain to you in person. 6 months ago. That would have been right around the time Megan had made that comment about Lily needing more structure and children from broken homes. I remembered Dad getting unusually quiet during that visit, changing the subject when Megan started talking about boarding schools and summer camps that might broaden Lily's horizons. The house and its contents, Mr. Morrison continued, along with his savings account and life insurance policy, are left entirely to his granddaughter, Lily Carson, with Emily Carson named as trustee, until Lily reaches the age of 25. The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach, not from the shock of inheritance, but from the stunning realization of what this meant. Megan's face had gone completely white, then flushed red. I'm sorry. What? Megan's voice was barely controlled. There must be some mistake. Mr. Morrison looked at her over his glasses. No mistake. Ms. Pemberton, your father was quite clear about his wishes, but I'm the eldest daughter. I'm the one who's been responsible, who's made something of herself. Emily is a single mother living in a tiny apartment, for God's sake. Megan, David said quietly, putting a warning hand on her arm. But she shook him off, her composure completely shattered. This is ridiculous. Dad was obviously not thinking clearly. Maybe he had dementia or someone influenced him. Emily, what did you do? Did you manipulate him into changing his will? Megan! I finally found my voice. I didn't even know Dad had a will, let alone what was in it. Mr. Morrison cleared his throat. If I may, your father was absolutely of sound mind when he made these changes. In fact, he insisted on having Dr. Palmer, his physician, present when he signed the documents to attest to his mental competency. He turned to address Lily directly, his voice gentling. Lily, your grandfather wanted me to explain something to you. He said you were the light of his life, and that he wanted to make sure you always had a home and security. The house on Division Street is yours, and there's enough money to pay for your education through college. Lily looked confused, glancing between me and Mr. Morrison. But what about Mama? Where will we live? You'll live in the house together, sweetheart, Mr. Morrison explained. Your mama will take care of everything until you're old enough to make your own decisions about it. How much money are we talking about? Megan demanded, her voice sharp and ugly. Mr. Morrison consulted his papers. The house is worth approximately $400,000 in the current market. The savings account contains $58,000, and the life insurance policy was for $100,000. So roughly $560,000 total. I felt dizzy. Dad, who had always seemed to live paycheck to paycheck, who drove a truck older than I was and wore the same 3 shirts to church every week, had left over $500,000 to my daughter. That's impossible, Megan said flatly. Dad was a carpenter. He didn't have that kind of money. Your father was very frugal, Mr. Morrison replied. He bought his house in 1982 for $45,000. He invested regularly in a simple index fund, never touching the principal. He lived below his means for decades specifically so he could leave something to his family. His family. Megan stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I'm his family too. I'm his daughter. This is completely unfair. Megan, please, David said, standing and trying to take her arm again. No. She whirled around to face me, her eyes blazing. Mom, this is your fault, Emily. You kept Lily away from our family, made Dad think she was the only grandchild who mattered. You poisoned him against my boys. That's not true, I said, my own anger finally rising. Lily loved Dad, and he loved her, and your boys barely acknowledged his existence. When's the last time Tyler or Brandon visited him, or called him? They're busy with school and activities. They have full lives. So does Lily, but she still made time for her grandfather. Mr. Morrison stood up, clearly uncomfortable with the family drama unfolding in his conference room. Perhaps we should take a break. No, Megan cut him off. I want to know if there's any way to contest this will. Dad was clearly not thinking straight. Maybe Emily convinced him that her daughter needed the money more than his other grandchildren. Ms. Pemberton, Mr. Morrison said firmly, "Your father was very specific about his reasoning. He left me a letter to read to you if there were any questions about his decision." He pulled out a sealed envelope and opened it carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper in Dad's familiar handwriting. "To my daughters," he read aloud. "If you are hearing this letter, it means there are questions about my will. I want you to know that I made my decision with a clear mind and a full heart. Megan, you have built a successful life and married a good man who can provide for you and your children. You don't need my help to be secure and happy." Megan sank back into her chair, her face crumpling. "Emily, you have done something much harder. You have raised a beautiful, kind, intelligent daughter on your own while working a job that helps other children. You have never asked me for anything, even when I knew you were struggling. Lily is not just my granddaughter. She is my legacy. She has my curiosity, my love of learning, and my belief that kindness matters more than money." Mr. Morrison paused, looking at Lily with a smile. "Lily, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. But I want you to know that you brought more joy to my final years than I could have imagined. Use this gift to build a good life, to get an education, and to always remember that your worth comes from who you are, not what you have." He folded the letter carefully. It's signed and dated 6 months ago. The room was completely silent except for the sound of Megan crying quietly. Lily reached over and took my hand, her small fingers squeezing mine. "Mama," she whispered, "does this mean we don't have to worry about money anymore?" I looked at my daughter, this incredible child who had just inherited a fortune but was primarily concerned about our security, and felt my heart break and heal at the same time. "No, baby," I whispered back. "We don't have to worry anymore." Megan looked up, her makeup smeared and her perfect composure completely gone. "This isn't over, Emily. I'm going to fight this." "On what grounds?" David asked quietly. "The will is clear. It's properly witnessed, and there's a letter explaining his reasoning." "On the grounds that it's not fair," Megan snapped. "I'm his daughter, too." Mr. Morrison gathered his papers. "Ms. Pemberton, you're certainly entitled to seek your own legal counsel, but I should warn you that contesting a will when the deceased was clearly of sound mind and had valid reasons for his decisions is both expensive and rarely successful." After we signed some initial paperwork, we left the law office in a daze. Megan and David had departed without another word, Megan's face a mask of fury and humiliation. In the elevator down, Lily pressed close to my side. "Mama, why is Aunt Megan so mad? Didn't Grandpa Rick have the right to give his things to whoever he wanted?" "Yes, sweetheart, he did. And sometimes when people are disappointed, they say things they don't really mean." But even as I said it, I knew that wasn't true. Megan had meant every word. The sister I thought I knew, the one who had sung me lullabies when I was little and taught me how to braid my hair, had shown me a side of herself I'd never seen before. As we drove home through the Portland afternoon, I couldn't stop thinking about Dad's letter. 6 months ago, he had started to see something in our family dynamic that I had been too close to notice. Megan's subtle cruelty toward Lily, her dismissive attitude toward my choices, her assumption that her successful marriage made her more deserving than a single mother-teacher. "Mama," Lily said from the back seat. "What are we going to do with Grandpa Rick's house?" "I don't know yet, baby. What do you think we should do?" She was quiet for a long moment, looking out the window at the neighborhoods we passed. "I think we should live there. It still smells like him, like coffee and the soap he used, and his garden needs someone to take care of it." I caught her eyes in the rearview mirror. "Would you like that? Living in Grandpa Rick's house? Only if you want to, too." "But Mama, I think he left it to me because he knew we belonged there, together." And just like that, my 10-year-old daughter had figured out what it had taken me years to understand. We belonged together, Lily and I, and now we had a home that was truly ours, a gift from a man who had seen our worth when others couldn't. But as we pulled into our apartment complex for what might be one of the last times, I couldn't shake the feeling that Megan's threat wasn't empty. The look in her eyes when she'd left the lawyer's office was one I'd never seen before. Desperate, humiliated, and calculating. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork, phone calls, and sleepless nights. True to her word, Megan hired a lawyer, a sharp-dressed woman named Patricia Holbrook who specialized in estate disputes. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday, delivered to my school during my lunch break. It was thick, official-looking, and filled with legal terms that made my head spin. In essence, it claimed that Dad had been unduly influenced, that the will was invalid, and that his estate should be divided equally between his 2 daughters. The letter demanded we cease any actions related to the inheritance until the matter could be resolved in court. I called Mr. Morrison immediately, my hands shaking as I dialed. "Don't panic, Emily," he said in his calm, reassuring voice. "This is exactly what I expected. Ms. Holbrook is known for taking on cases like this, even when she knows they're weak. She's hoping you'll settle out of court to avoid the expense and stress of litigation. But what if she wins? What if they prove Dad wasn't thinking clearly? They won't, because he was. We have medical records, witness statements, and most importantly, we have the letter explaining his reasoning. Your father was very thorough in protecting his decision. Still, the stress was taking its toll. I found myself snapping at my students, lying awake at night staring at the ceiling, jumping every time the phone rang. Lily noticed, of course. She started being extra helpful around the apartment, doing her homework without being asked and making me cups of tea when she thought I looked tired. "Mama, are you worried about Aunt Megan?" she asked one evening as we sat on our small couch, sharing a bowl of popcorn and watching a Disney movie. I considered lying, telling her everything was fine. But Lily deserved honesty. "A little bit, sweetheart. But Mr. Morrison says we don't need to worry. Grandpa Rick made sure his will was very clear." "Good," she said firmly. "Because I don't think Aunt Megan really loved Grandpa Rick the way we did. She only visited him on holidays, and she never remembered his favorite things. Out of the mouths of babes, my 10-year-old had grasped something that had taken me years to see clearly. During this time, I started making regular visits to Dad's house, partly to check on things and partly because being there made me feel closer to him. The house was exactly as he'd left it. Coffee mug in the sink, reading glasses on the kitchen table, his favorite sweater draped over the back of his chair. One Saturday afternoon, while Lily was playing in the backyard garden Dad had taught her to tend, I found myself going through his dresser drawers. I wasn't snooping exactly, just trying to understand this man who had lived so simply but saved so much. In the bottom drawer, underneath his winter sweaters, I found a manila folder labeled "For Emily" in his careful handwriting. Inside were bank statements going back 10 years, showing the steady growth of his investments. There were also newspaper clippings, every article that had ever mentioned my school, every photo of Lily from her elementary school's newsletter, every small achievement carefully preserved. At the bottom was a letter addressed to me in his handwriting, dated just 2 weeks before he died. With trembling hands, I opened it. "My dearest Emily," it began. "If you're reading this, then you know about the will, and probably about Megan's reaction to it. I want you to understand why I made the choice I did, because I know it will cause family problems that I won't be there to help you handle. I have watched you raise Lily on your own for 10 years, and I have never been more proud of anyone in my life. You chose to become a teacher because you wanted to help children, even though you could have made more money doing something else. You chose to keep Lily when her father left, even though it would have been easier to give up. You have never asked me for money, even when I knew you were eating peanut butter sandwiches for dinner so Lily could have proper meals. Megan has advantages you don't have. She married well, she has financial security, and her children will inherit David's business success. But more than that, she has forgotten what it means to struggle, to choose love over convenience, to put someone else's needs before your own. I'm giving this gift to Lily because she is the future of our family. She has your kind heart and your strong spirit, but she also has opportunities you never had. With this inheritance, she can go to any college she wants, maybe even medical school or law school if that's what interests her. She can have choices. But Emily, this gift is for you too. You have carried the weight of supporting your family alone for too long. Now you can breathe. You can choose where to live based on what makes you happy, not just what you can afford. You can take Lily on vacations, buy her books, give her experiences. You can even go back to school yourself if you want to. I know Megan will be angry. I know she might try to fight this legally, but I also know that you are stronger than you think you are, and that you will protect Lily's inheritance because it represents her future. I love you both more than words can say. Take care of each other, and don't let anyone make you feel guilty for accepting this gift. You've earned it through years of love and sacrifice. All my love, Dad. I sat on his bed, holding the letter and crying until I couldn't breathe. How had he seen so clearly what I had been too close to understand? How had he known that Megan would react exactly as she had? "Mama," Lily appeared in the doorway, dirt on her hands from the garden. "Why are you crying? Are you sad about Grandpa Rick again? Come here, baby." I held out my arms, and she climbed onto the bed beside me. I found a letter Grandpa Rick wrote to me. He wanted me to know how much he loved us. Can I hear it? I read her the parts that were appropriate for a 10-year-old, watching her face light up when she heard about college and choices and opportunities. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Mama, Grandpa Rick was really smart, wasn't he? He knew Aunt Megan would be mean about this. He was very wise, yes. Do you think we should move into his house now? I think he would want us to be here, taking care of his things. That afternoon, we started packing. It didn't take long. We didn't have much stuff, and Dad's house was fully furnished. Within a week, we had officially moved from our cramped apartment to the comfortable 3-bedroom house where I'd spent my own childhood. Lily chose the room that had been mine when I was her age, delighting in the window seat where I used to read for hours. I took Dad's old room. After storing his clothes and personal items in the guest room closet, being surrounded by his things was comforting rather than sad, like being wrapped in a warm hug. The second legal letter arrived on a Thursday, hand-delivered to Dad's house by a process server who looked apologetic as he handed it over. This one was more aggressive, demanding depositions and financial records, threatening to tie up the estate in court for years. I called Mr. Morrison again, and this time I could hear concern in his voice. Emily, I think it's time we considered making a settlement offer. Not because we're worried about losing, but because litigation is expensive and stressful, especially with a child involved. What kind of settlement? Maybe $50,000 to Megan, just to make this go away. It's less than 10% of the total inheritance, and it would allow you and Lily to move forward with your lives. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. No. Emily, I understand your feelings, but no, I said more firmly. Dad didn't leave his money to Megan for a reason. If I give her $50,000 now, what's to stop her from coming back for more later? What's to stop her from spending the next 15 years making our lives miserable? That's a valid point, but consider what a court battle could do to your family relationships. I almost laughed. What family relationships? She tried to ban my daughter from her grandfather's funeral. She accused me of manipulating a dying man. She's already destroyed our family relationship. That weekend, David called. I was surprised to hear from him, and even more surprised by what he had to say. Emily, can we meet for coffee? Without the lawyers, without Megan, just you and me. We met at a small cafe in the Hawthorne district, neutral territory where neither of us would feel threatened. David looked tired, older somehow than he had just a month ago. He ordered black coffee and sat across from me in the booth, running his hands through his hair. I want to apologize for Megan's behavior, he said without preamble. The funeral, the legal challenges, all of it. She's not handling this well. That's an understatement. He winced. Emily, you have to understand. Megan has always defined herself by being the successful daughter, the one who made good choices, the one Dad could be proud of. Learning that he chose to leave everything to Lily, it's shattered her sense of who she is. That doesn't excuse trying to steal a child's inheritance. No, it doesn't. And I've told her that. We've been fighting about this for weeks. He looked up at me, his eyes tired. I want you to know that I think your father made the right choice. You've done an incredible job with Lily, and you deserve this security. Then why are you here? Because I'm asking you to consider a small settlement, not for legal reasons, but for family reasons. Megan is my wife, and I love her, but she's spiraling. If this goes to court and she loses publicly, I'm not sure she'll ever recover. I studied his face, this man who had always been kind to me and Lily, who had tried to defend us at the funeral. What kind of settlement are you talking about? $25,000. Just enough for her to save face, to tell people that the family worked things out amicably. And in exchange, she drops all legal challenges and agrees to stay out of your lives unless you invite her back in. I thought about Lily, about the stress this legal battle was putting on both of us, about the family gatherings that would never happen again, about cousins who would grow up as strangers. I'll think about it, I said finally. That's all I can ask. As I drove home, I tried to imagine what Dad would want me to do. Would he want me to fight on principle? Or would he want me to take the path that gave Lily the most peace? I found my answer when I walked into the house and saw Lily at the kitchen table, working on her homework in the same spot where Dad used to help me with mine 30 years ago. She looked up when I came in, her face bright with contentment. Mama, I love living here. It feels like home. It is home, baby. It's our home now. That night, after Lily was asleep, I called Mr. Morrison. I'll offer $25,000. with a written agreement that she never challenges the will again, and that she stays out of our lives unless we choose to reconcile. I think that's wise, Emily. I'll draw up the papers. The settlement was signed the following Friday. Megan never contacted me directly. Everything went through lawyers. But David sent a text. Thank you for being the bigger person. I hope someday we can all heal from this. 3 months later, Lily and I were settled into our new life. She was thriving in her new school, having made friends with the neighbor kids and joined the chess club. I had transferred to a school closer to our new neighborhood and was taking graduate classes in educational leadership, using some of Dad's gift to invest in my own future. On a sunny Saturday morning in March, we were in the garden planting the vegetables Dad had planned for spring: tomatoes, zucchini, and green beans. Lily was carefully reading the seed packets, making sure we planted everything at the right depth. "Mama," she said, sitting back on her heels and looking at the freshly planted rows, "do you think Grandpa Rick knows we're taking care of his garden?" I looked around at the yard where Dad had spent countless hours, at the house where he'd raised me and loved Lily, at the life we were building with his gift. "I think he knows, baby. And I think he's happy." As if in response, a gentle breeze rustled through the trees, carrying the scent of the jasmine Dad had planted when I was Lily's age. Somewhere in the distance, a neighbor was playing music, and children were laughing in their yards. We were home. We were safe. We were loved. And finally, after years of struggle and worry, we were free to just be happy. 2 years have passed since that awful day at the funeral, and sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. I'm sitting in Dad's old rocking chair on the front porch, watching Lily practice soccer kicks in the yard. She's 12 now, taller and more confident, but she still has those bright green eyes that see everything, and that generous heart that loves deeply. The house has become truly ours over these 2 years. We've painted the walls in colors we love: soft lavender in Lily's room, sage green in the kitchen where we spend most of our time. The garden has expanded beyond Dad's original design, with Lily insisting we add a section for flowers, because Grandpa Rick would want beauty, not just vegetables. I finished my master's degree in educational leadership last spring and was promoted to assistant principal at Roosevelt Elementary. The extra income, combined with Dad's gift, means we live comfortably for the first time in my adult life. Lily takes piano lessons, belongs to the chess club, and last summer we took our first real vacation, a week at the Oregon coast where she learned to boogie board and collected enough shells to fill 3 jars. But the most important change isn't financial. It's the peace, the deep, settled feeling of security that comes from knowing we have a home, a future, and each other. Megan and I haven't spoken since the settlement was signed. I've heard through mutual acquaintances that she and David went through a rough patch. Apparently, the legal fees and the stress of the whole situation nearly broke their marriage. They've since gone to counseling and seem to be doing better, but Megan still blames me for turning Dad against her, according to David's brief text updates. Tyler and Brandon are in college now, and I sometimes wonder if they even remember their grandfather or their young cousin. That makes me sad for them, but I've learned that I can't fix every broken relationship in our family. "Mama," Lily calls from the yard. "Mrs. Chen wants to know if we can help with her vegetable garden next weekend. She says her tomatoes need young eyes to spot the hornworms." Mrs. Chen, Dad's former neighbor, has become like a grandmother to Lily. At 82, she's still sharp and energetic, full of stories about the neighborhood and always ready with homemade cookies or advice about gardening. "Tell her we'd love to help," I call back. This is what Dad wanted for us, I think. Community roots. The kind of life where a 12-year-old knows her neighbors and feels responsible for helping them. Last month, something unexpected happened that made me realize how much we've all grown from this experience. I was at the grocery store when I literally ran into David. Our carts collided in the cereal aisle. After the initial awkwardness, we ended up talking for 20 minutes while Lily picked out the least healthy cereal I would allow. "How is everyone?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Good. Different, but good. Megan's been volunteering at a food bank downtown. I think losing the legal battle made her really examine some things about herself. That's surprising. She's not ready to apologize yet," he said carefully. "But she's getting there. She talks about Lily sometimes, wonders how she's doing." I glanced over at my daughter, who was seriously comparing nutritional labels like I'd taught her. "She's doing really well. She made honor roll again, and she's captain of her chess team. Richard would be so proud." He would be. David hesitated, then pulled out his phone. Would you mind if I showed Megan this picture of Lily? Not to cause trouble, just she is her niece. I looked at the photo he was referencing. Lily at her 6th grade graduation, beaming as she received an award for community service. Her hair was in the neat French braid I'd finally mastered, and she was wearing the pearl earrings Dad had given me for my 16th birthday. Okay, I said. You can show her. It was a small step, but it felt significant. Maybe someday, when enough time has passed and enough healing has happened, we might be able to rebuild some kind of relationship. Not the same as before. Too much damage has been done for that, but something new, something honest. A few weeks later, David texted me. Megan cried when she saw the photo. She said Lily looks just like you did at that age. I didn't respond to the text, but I saved it. Yesterday was the anniversary of Dad's death, and Lily and I spent the morning at Lone Fir Cemetery. We brought fresh daisies and the chess set Dad had left her, the one he'd taught us both to play on. Lily set up the board on the grass next to his headstone and played a game against his memory, moving pieces for both sides and talking to him the whole time. I'm in 7th grade now, Grandpa Rick, and I'm taking algebra because Mama says I'm ready for it. I still live in your house, and I take really good care of your garden. The tomatoes were amazing this year. She paused to move a knight, considering her strategy. I know Aunt Megan was really mad about your will, but I want you to know that I'm using your gift the right way. Mama doesn't have to worry about money anymore, and she smiles a lot more than she used to. She's even dating someone nice. His name is Mark, and he teaches high school math. He likes me, and he thinks it's cool that I can beat him at chess sometimes. I smiled at that. Mark Rodriguez had been a wonderful surprise in our lives, a gentle man who treated both Lily and me with respect and genuine affection. He never tried to replace Dad in Lily's heart, understanding instinctively that some relationships are irreplaceable. I think you'd like him, Grandpa Rick. He fixes things around the house without being asked, and he always remembers that I don't like mushrooms on my pizza. Mama laughs when he's around, the kind of laughing she did when we used to visit you on Sundays. Lily moved her queen and smiled. Checkmate, I win again, Grandpa Rick. But you taught me everything I know, so really, you win too. As we walked back to the car, Lily slipped her hand into mine, something she still does sometimes, even though she's 12 and too old for public hand-holding most of the time. Mama, do you think Grandpa Rick knew how everything would turn out? With Aunt Megan and the lawyers and us living in his house, I considered the question seriously, thinking about the man who had seen our family dynamic so clearly, who had protected us even after his death. I think he hoped for the best and prepared for the worst, I said finally. He knew there might be problems, but he also knew we were strong enough to handle them. We were strong enough, weren't we? We were. We are. This morning, I found Lily in the kitchen making pancakes from scratch, Dad's recipe that she's memorized. She was humming while she cooked, completely at ease in the space that used to be his, but is fully ours now. What's the occasion? I asked, accepting the cup of coffee she handed me. No occasion. I just wanted to make something that would make the house smell like Grandpa Rick's Sunday mornings. And it does. The whole kitchen smells like vanilla and cinnamon and love, like family traditions that survive loss and grow stronger through sharing. As I write this, Lily is at the kitchen table doing homework, occasionally asking me questions about her history project on women's suffrage. She wants to interview me about being a single mother, about the challenges women still face in pursuing education and careers. Did you always want to be a teacher, Mama? I wanted to help kids learn and grow. Teaching was the best way I knew how to do that. What about now? Do you still want to be a teacher forever? I pause, thinking about the leadership program I'm considering, about the possibility of becoming a principal and helping shape entire schools instead of just individual classrooms. I think I want to help more kids, maybe in a different way. What do you think about that? I think Grandpa Rick would say you should follow your dreams, just like he taught me to follow mine. She's right, of course. Dad always believed in pushing ourselves to grow, to take chances, to believe we deserved good things. This evening, Mark is coming over for dinner. Lily wants to cook for him, something she insists on doing at least once a month to make sure he appreciates Mama's cooking the rest of the time. She's making Dad's famous spaghetti sauce, a recipe that was passed down from his Italian mother, and that I'm now teaching her. Do you think Grandpa Rick would like Mark? She asked earlier, as we prepared the ingredients. I think Grandpa Rick would like anyone who makes us happy and treats us well. Good, because I told Mark that if he ever hurts your feelings, I'll challenge him to a chess match and destroy him. I laughed until I cried. This child, this incredible young woman who combines her grandfather's wisdom with her own fierce loyalty, who has handled loss and change and family drama with more grace than most adults. She is everything Dad hoped she would become. Later tonight, after dinner and homework and bedtime stories that are becoming conversations about books instead of me reading aloud, I'll sit in Dad's rocking chair and think about how far we've come. 2 years ago, we were struggling to pay rent on a tiny apartment. Now we own a beautiful home, have financial security, and most importantly, we have peace. Megan took something from us when she tried to exclude Lily from the funeral and challenged the will. She took the easy family relationships, the comfortable assumption that blood relatives will always support each other. But in losing those illusions, we gained something more valuable, the knowledge that we can handle anything life throws at us, that our love for each other is stronger than other people's greed or resentment. Dad's gift wasn't just money or property. It was the message that we were worthy of love, of investment, of faith in our future. It was the validation that kindness and loyalty matter more than conventional success. It was the promise that hard work and sacrifice don't go unnoticed, even when it feels like no one is paying attention. Most of all, it was the assurance that love doesn't end with death. It continues in the choices we make, the values we pass down, the security we provide for the next generation. Tomorrow is Saturday, and Lily and I will work in the garden together, planting bulbs for next spring's flowers. We'll visit Mrs. Chen and help her with whatever project she has planned. We'll probably end up at the bookstore downtown, where Lily will pick out 3 new novels, and I'll browse the section on educational leadership. It will be an ordinary Saturday in an extraordinary life. Extraordinary not because of the money Dad left us, but because of the love that made it possible. As I finish writing this, I can hear Lily in her room, talking on the phone with her best friend about their science project. Her voice is animated and happy, full of the confidence that comes from knowing you are loved and supported and safe. That's Dad's real legacy. Not the inheritance that caused so much family drama, but the security and peace that allows a young girl to dream big dreams and believe they're possible. And maybe, someday, when enough time has passed and enough wounds have healed, Megan will understand that too. Maybe she'll realize that Dad's choice wasn't about choosing one daughter over another, but about protecting the most vulnerable members of our family and ensuring that love, rather than circumstance, determined our future. Until then, Lily and I will keep living our best lives, honoring Dad's memory not through grand gestures, but through daily choices to be kind, to work hard, to support each other, and to remember that the most important inheritance is the love we give and receive. The house is quiet now, except for the old familiar sounds, the heater cycling on, the refrigerator humming, the soft sound of Lily turning pages in her book. These are the sounds of home, of safety, of a life built on the foundation of one man's love and wisdom. Dad was right about everything. The gift he gave us wasn't just financial security, it was the freedom to be ourselves, to choose our own path, and to know that we deserved good things. We're living proof that love, in the end, really does conquer all.